In a brutal slave market, she was discarded like broken goods, worthless to all but a few credits. But when a human stepped in, everything changed. He saw not just a slave, but a person with hope, strength, and a future worth fighting for. This is a story of redemption, courage, and the unbreakable spirit that refuses to be defined by chains. The slave market on Zarlan Prime was a cacophony of chaos and despair, a place where sentient lives were reduced to mere commodities. Under the harsh glare of harsh artificial lights and the buzzing neon signs advertising the latest galactic wares, the auction platform was the stage for countless tragedies. Buyers and sellers from across the galaxy converged here, eyes sharp, wallets ready, their hearts colder than the void of space. It was a place where hope was extinguished, one bid at a time. On this particular day, the market was unusually crowded. Rumors had spread that a new shipment of slaves was being auctioned off, an assortment of different species, but none drew as much attention as the handful of humans. Humans were rare, and their resilience made them prized in these dark dealings. But among these captives was one who seemed to escape the eager eyes and clamorous bids. She was unlike the others. Small, frail, and scarred beyond recognition, her body bore the cruel imprint of 10 years of torment. Her name was Lyra, though no one here cared to know it. She sat slumped on the cold metal floor of the holding pen, her eyes distant and hollow, her spirit battered and broken. Her hands, once nimble and capable, trembled as she touched the remnants of tattered clothing clinging to her thin frame. Once full of dreams, she was now labeled surplus by her captors, a worthless asset to be discarded and forgotten. The traders whispered amongst themselves, mocking her as no more than space debris, a burden not worth a price. The auctioneer's booming voice broke through the din. Next lot. Surplus female human, 10 credits starting bid. The crowd shifted. Eyes passed over her quickly, uninterested. The room fell silent, no one raised a hand. Whispers floated, she's no use, too broken, not worth the trouble. The tension in the air was palpable. For many, this was just another routine auction, but for Lyra, it was a moment that could decide the fate of her remaining years. Suddenly, a calm voice cut through the noise. 10 credits, said a man stepping forward. His presence was commanding, yet his demeanor was gentle. Elias Ward, a human trader known more for his ethics than his profit, had arrived. The crowd turned their heads, curious and skeptical. Why would anyone buy such a broken slave? The price was low, almost insulting, but Elias made no effort to bargain. His hand was steady, his voice firm. The auctioneer glanced at Elias, then down at Lyra, as if measuring the irony. Sold, he declared. Lyra was stunned. She hadn't expected rescue. No one had ever come for her. No one had cared before. Elias approached her carefully, not with chains or weapons, but with a soft smile and an outstretched hand. She hesitated. Trust was a fragile thread she dared not grasp too tightly, but something in his eyes convinced her to take it. As they left the market, the crowds resumed their noisy barter, oblivious to the quiet miracle unfolding. On board Elias's ship, Lyra found shelter, food, and warmth, luxury she hadn't known in years. Yet the scars within her were not so easily healed. Nightmares haunted her sleep, and silence weighed heavy on her voice. Elias did not push. He understood pain, knew the depth of human suffering. Slowly he shared stories of Earth, of resilience, hope, and the fight for freedom. His words were balm, each one igniting tiny sparks of light inside her. Days turned into weeks. Lyra learned to trust again, her body regaining strength as her heart mended. She trained herself quietly, learning to defend against the shadows that lurked in the galaxy's darker corners. Elias became her teacher, her companion, her family. But their newfound peace was fragile. Word spread among the slave traders. The worthless human had been bought by Elias Ward, and they wanted her back. Ruthless bounty hunters stalked their trail, determined to reclaim what they saw as lost profit. Together, Lyra and Elias navigated star systems, evading capture and gathering allies. Along the way, Lyra discovered a fierce strength within herself, a will to fight for her own destiny, no longer a victim but a warrior. They encountered others broken by the galaxy's cruelty, slaves, refugees, and outcasts, who joined their cause. The small group became a beacon of hope, challenging the trade that had once consumed Lyra's life. The hunters finally caught up on the barren moon of Eridani IV. A brutal battle erupted. Lyra, armed with the skills Elias had taught her, fought alongside him. Her past pain fueled her determination, each strike was a reclaiming of her dignity. The battle was fierce, but victory belonged to those who fought for freedom. The hunters were defeated or fled into the void. Lyra stood among the ruins of the battlefield, no longer the broken girl of the auction but a symbol of resistance. Her scars told a story of survival, but her eyes reflected a fierce, unyielding hope. The galaxy would never be the same. The worthless slave had become a leader. And humanity, even in its darkest moments, had shown that worth was never measured in credits. The aftermath of the battle on Eridani IV was a turning point not just for Lyra and Elias, but for many who suffered under the oppressive systems of the galaxy. Word spread quickly through the interstellar networks about the mysterious human who had defied the odds, saving herself and many others from the clutches of the cruel slave trade. Lyra became a symbol of hope and resistance, a rallying point for those oppressed and forgotten. Her story inspired whispers of rebellion in the darkest corners of space, stirring the hearts of those who longed for freedom but had lost all hope. Elias, ever the quiet strategist, knew their fight had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, and the slave trade was a well-oiled machine protected by powerful factions and corrupt governments. They could not fight this war alone. Together, they set out to build a coalition, a network of outlaws, former slaves, and freedom fighters determined to dismantle the systems of cruelty piece by piece. Lyra's leadership grew naturally. Her experiences lent authenticity to her words, her resolve inspiring those who had only known despair. She spoke not just of survival, but of reclaiming dignity and humanity in a galaxy that had long forgotten both. Their small band traveled from star system to star system, disrupting slave shipments, freeing captives, and spreading the message of resistance. Each victory brought them closer to a future where no one would be left behind or discarded as surplus. But their path was dangerous. Powerful enemies marked them for death. Political intrigue, betrayals, and battles tested their resolve. Yet with every challenge, Lyra's spirit only grew stronger. The galaxy's darkest forces underestimated the power of a single human's will, a will tempered by suffering but fueled by unyielding hope. In quiet moments, Elias and Lyra reflected on their journey. They had transformed from rescuer and rescued to partners in a greater cause. Their bond was forged in hardship but sustained by shared dreams. Lyra's scars remained, a testament to her past, but she wore them with pride. They were proof that even the most broken could rise, that worth was never in the price paid but in the courage to live and fight. The story of the worthless slave bought by a human became legend, a beacon of hope for generations to come. The galaxy never forgot a single spark of resistance once it was lit. For Lyra, the spark had become a blazing fire that refused to be extinguished. The scars she bore were no longer just marks of pain, they were badges of survival, symbols of a story that would change the fate of many. After the fierce battle on Eridani IV, Lyra and Elias had established themselves as more than just survivors. They became leaders in a covert rebellion against the horrific slave trade network that dominated many star systems. With every freed captive, with every shipment intercepted, the network began to crack under the weight of its own cruelty. Lyra's transformation was extraordinary. Once broken and discarded, she now stood tall with quiet authority, her eyes burning with determination. Her voice, once barely audible, now carried the weight of justice and hope. She spoke to crowds of former slaves, to underground resistance cells, and even to sympathetic officials in the Galactic Council. She told them, no one was worthless, no life was disposable, and the price of freedom was worth every risk. Elias watched her rise with a mixture of pride and humility. His quiet strength had been the steady hand that helped her heal, but Lyra's courage was the thunder that shook the galaxy. Together, they had built something that neither could have accomplished alone. A movement grounded in humanity, compassion, and the fierce will to reclaim dignity. Their coalition grew rapidly. Former slaves who had lost everything joined their ranks, bringing with them invaluable knowledge of the trade routes, corrupt officials, and the inner workings of the slavers' operations. Outlaws and mercenaries tired of the cruelty offered their services. Scientists and engineers, disgusted by the galactic power's indifference, provided technology and weapons. The rebellion wasn't just about fighting, it was about hope. Safe houses and sanctuaries sprang up on forgotten planets. Education centers were established for freed children. Healing stations nurtured broken bodies and minds. The galaxy's underbelly, once dominated by fear and suffering, began to pulse with new life. But the enemy was not idle. The slave trade empire was vast, funded by powerful oligarchs and backed by corrupt military factions. They unleashed assassins, bounty hunters, and propaganda campaigns to crush the rebellion. Ships attacked in the dark of space. Ambushes shattered quiet sanctuaries. The cost of freedom was high, and every victory was hard-fought. One fateful day, intelligence came through that the heart of the slave trade operation, the command station known as the Black Spire, was vulnerable. Located in the hazardous nebula of Caris V, the Black Spire was a fortress built to withstand assault from the most heavily armed fleets. Elias and Lyra convened with their council. It was a dangerous mission, but an opportunity that couldn't be ignored. Taking down the Black Spire would disrupt the entire trade network, freeing thousands of captives and crippling their captors. The preparations were meticulous. Ships were outfitted for stealth and speed. Tactical simulations were run. Every member of the coalition knew the stakes. Lyra prepared differently. She revisited the painful memories of her past, not as a victim, but as a warrior who had reclaimed her future. She trained harder, pushing her body and mind beyond limits she had never imagined. She wanted to face this final battle not just with courage, but with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose. When the fleet set course for Caris V, silence fell over the rebellion. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The battle for the Black Spire was brutal and unrelenting. The space around Caris V was a swirling storm of cosmic radiation and debris, making sensor readings unreliable and communications difficult. The defenders of the Black Spire knew this and used it to their advantage, launching waves of heavily armed fighters and drones. But the rebels fought with a fury born from years of suffering. Lyra led a squadron through the storm, navigating treacherous asteroid fields and enemy fire. Her ship danced through the chaos with deadly precision, taking out enemy vessels and opening a path for the main fleet. As they breached the station's outer defenses, ground teams, including Elias, deployed inside the Black Spire's corridors. The station was a labyrinth of steel and shadows, echoing with the cries of prisoners and the hiss of life support systems struggling to survive. Lyra moved with purpose, freeing captives locked in cells, guiding terrified slaves to safety. Each freed life was a victory, a reminder of why they fought. The station's overseers, cold and ruthless, tried to rally their forces to crush the rebellion. In a decisive confrontation in the command center, Lyra faced the leader of the Black Spire security, an alien warlord notorious for his cruelty. The battle was fierce, physical, and mental. The warlord mocked her, calling her the worthless human, a name she had once accepted in despair. But now, standing tall and fierce, she countered every strike with the strength of hope and the will to survive. The final blow came when Elias breached the command console, shutting down the station's power grid and communications. The Black Spire systems collapsed, plunging the station into darkness and chaos. The rebellion had won the battle. In the aftermath, the Black Spire was transformed. No longer a prison or a fortress of despair, it became a sanctuary and a hub for the growing coalition. Freed slaves found healing and purpose there. The galaxy watched as the symbol of oppression was turned into a beacon of freedom. Lyra's journey had come full circle. From the worthless slave left behind to a leader who changed the course of history, her story was a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the human spirit. As she stood on the balcony of the transformed station, gazing at the stars that had once been her prison, she smiled. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges yet to come, but she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Elias joined her quietly, his presence steady as always. "You did it," he said softly. "No," Lyra replied, eyes shining with quiet strength. "We did it. Together." And so, the galaxy learned that worth was not measured by credits or chains, but by the courage to rise, to fight, and to never be forgotten.